Hello friends, it's Kristie Marcotte. In today's video, I'll be using some mouse dies from Elizabeth Craft Designs, but I first wanted to show the beautiful star-spangled spectacular craft mat from GLASSBOARD Studio. This is a magnetic glass mat, and this particular design is a limited edition for July. So once July is over, this design will no longer be available. The magnet set is also a limited edition for July. I love patriotic colors, so I couldn't resist purchasing the mat and the magnets. And I know I've shown this in another video, but I wanted to remind everyone before July is over if you're interested. And if you are shopping at GLASSBOARD Studio, don't forget to use my discount code Kristie to save 15%. Here's a look at the main dies I'll be using on my card. They're from Elizabeth Craft Designs. I'll be using the little mouse set and the art accessories. For pattern paper, I'm using Elizabeth Craft Designs Pretty Pastels, and also some of Echo Park's Wood Grains, the Warms collection. For the background of my card, I selected the yellow diagonal stripe tone-on-tone. And at the very bottom of the card, I'm adding a 1-inch strip of one of the wood grain papers. The background panel is A2 size, 5.5 inches by 4.25 inches. I'll put adhesive on the back, add my card front onto a card base. I'm keeping the background very simple since the card will feature so many fun die cut images. And you can see here I did a little bit of die cutting. I'll start off by inking the die cuts. I cut out the mouse from some craft cardstock. So I'm just selecting all the different pieces. The little mouse has the option of facing forward or facing sideways. My card will feature the mouse facing sideways. The die set also has the options of a straight arm or a bent arm. The mouse I'm assembling, its right arm will be straight and the left one will be bent. And the arms, feet, and tail are all on one die, so when you pass it through the die machine, you cut out all those pieces at the same time. The ink color I'm using is Distress Oxide Vintage Photo, and I placed a small silicone mat on my craft mat to help hold the ink pad in place. I'll ink the outside edge of the mouse pieces. Now some will be layered on top of others, so I'm only adding inks in areas that will be visible. This background piece that has the mouse's head and one ear, most of that will be covered up, so I really just needed to add ink on the ear. I'll also ink up the arms, the feet, and the end of the tail. So there's the main mouse body all inked. Now I'll do the mouse's belly and the inside of one ear since only one of them will be visible. I just realized I missed one leg since I want the feet facing the same direction. On the die, it has one facing right and one left, so I did need to cut it out again to get both feet facing one direction. The ink color I'm using for the belly and ear is Distress Oxide Saltwater Taffy, and I'll ink the outside edge of the belly. Most of this will be covered up. Then I'll ink just that outside edge area of the inside of the ear. I also used a little bit of the Saltwater Taffy color on the mouse's cheek. Now I'll clean up my glass mat, and I just wiped it with a baby wipe and dried it with a crafty cleanup cloth from scrapbook.com. So now it's time to assemble the main mouse. There's one piece that has the eye opening. I'm going to inlay the eye, so on the back side I'm adding a piece of clear double-sided adhesive tape. I'm using white for the main eye. And then for that small circle opening, I use black cardstock. And to pick up that teeny tiny piece, I'm using the wax end of scrapbook.com's Craft Pro Pick tool. Now I know there are lots of die cuts. Don't be discouraged. The end results are worth it. Trust me. I think the mouse dies have been out for several years. I discovered them a little over a year ago, and now I'm obsessed. I have the little mouse, the big mouse, and a ton of the add-on sets. After adding the inside piece of the one ear, I put glue on the back of the ear, adhered it in front of the other ear. Now I'll add the face. This is the portion that has the eye. Next I'll add the little muzzle area, and I use a lighter tan cardstock color for that. For the mouse's nose, I use a light pink cardstock. Now I'll assemble the body. Put glue on the back, attach the belly portion. And the cardstock color I use for the belly is the same one I use for the inside of the ear. Next I'll add the feet. Just putting a tiny bit of glue at the top of the legs, placing the body on top. The art accessory set includes this cute little apron. I cut it out using one of the tone-on-tone teal pattern papers in the pastel print collection by Elizabeth Craft Designs. For the pocket, I cut these out from some teal cardstock from my stash. Now I'll put glue on the back of the apron and attach it on the mouse's body. And I like to add the apron before the mouse's head. So to attach the head, I'll add just a tiny drop of glue at that little peak area on the body and then adhere the head down. And I tilted its head up just slightly. Now once the glue dries, everything will be adhered together. But just to make sure it stays put, I will put a piece of clear double-sided adhesive tape on the back to hold the head and body. The art accessory set also comes with this cute little beret hat for the artist mouse. I use black cardstock for the little top and then the background piece, and the same dark teal cardstock that I use for the pocket for the main area of the hat. After gluing on the hat, I'll put a little bit of glue at the bottom of the tail and place it behind the mouse. So there's most of the mouse assembled. I'll set it aside for now and start assembling the easel. I used dark brown cardstock for the main easel and also the bottom crossbar. The two pieces that will hold the painting, I used a lighter brown cardstock. So I have just one more piece, that top cross area that holds the painting. I'll put glue on the back and line it up with the easel piece. So now I'll set that aside, and I have all the die cut pieces in the medium craft stack tray from Spellbinders. After doing all that die cutting, I did not want to lose any pieces. So now it's time to assemble the mouse's masterpiece, the painting. For the canvas, I used a very light blue cardstock color that has a linen texture finish. The grass border is from Jaded Blossom's Spring Scenic die set, and I'll be adding a sunflower. I will add a little bit of ink along the outside edge of the sunflower. I'm using Distress Oxide Wild Honey color. The stem of the sunflower is from Jaded Blossom's Gnome Thanksgiving add-on set. The actual sunflower is from Jaded Blossom's Build-A-Booth fall add-on set. And I know lots of different die sets. The leaves are from Jaded Blossom's Gnome Garden add-on set. I'll tuck the bottom of the stem behind the little grassy hill, then add the sunflower. Now I'll add two leaves, one on the right side of the stem and one on the left. To finish off the scene, the mouse has painted a few clouds, and the cloud dies are actually the little paint areas that go on the palette. I thought they looked like clouds, so I cut out 3 of them from white cardstock. Now that the painting is finished, I'll add it on the easel. Now I ended up doing the painting more portrait size. I think it was designed to be horizontal, so when adding it on the easel, you only see a tiny bit of that little light brown piece that holds the painting. But that's okay, I think it still works just fine. So now I'll add the different paint colors on the palette. Decided to go with white cardstock for the palette. On another card, and I'll show that at the end, I cut out the palette from a little bit darker brown cardstock, but I felt that it matched the color of the mouse too much, so it didn't stand out. I think the white palette works better. For the paint, I used the same 5 colors of cardstock that I use on the sunflower painting. Next, I'll assemble the jar of water, although I end up not using it. For the jar, I used some off-white cardstock, and then I cut out a second one from light blue cardstock and simply trimmed off an area so it looks like water. And then for the very top, the lid of the jar, I used some gray cardstock. So now it's time to assemble the paint tubes. For the main tube, I used some silver pearlescent cardstock. I ended up cutting out more paint tubes than I need. I'm only adding 4, even though I did use 5 different paint colors. On the paint tubes, I used the same color cardstock for the lid and that little label. And the cardstock colors are the same as the colors on the painting. I did the dark brown, both shades of green, and the yellow. So the only color I didn't do a paint tube is the light blue. So now I'll add that little end cap piece, and these are fairly small. I'm first putting a small drop of Barely Art glue, and I'm picking those up with the Craft Pro Pick tool. And before that glue dries completely, I'm making sure they're lined up perfectly with the background. So I have just one more paint tube to add that little cap. This is the brown color. I'll get it adjusted before the glue dries. So you can see in the tray there are less and less die cut pieces. Next, I'll assemble the paintbrushes and also the little palette knife. I used a brown cardstock for the handle of the paintbrushes and the palette knife. The main piece of the palette knife, I used more of the silver pearlescent cardstock. For the paintbrushes, there are 3 different styles of the bristles. So I made sure to feature all 5 colors for the brushes. After adding the little brush area with the paint color, I'll attach the metal piece, use more of the silver pearlescent cardstock. The brush pieces are all included on one die, including the bristles, so it is a little more work to just cut out the area that you want. But I still like having them on one die since you don't have to run it through your die machine as often. The brush with the flat top, I use the dark green cardstock for the bristles. And the final brushes have this little teardrop area for the bristles. I cut it out of the yellow and dark brown colors. So there's the yellow brush all assembled. I have just one more to go with this dark brown paint color. I'll add the bristle area first and then that little metal band. The rest of the die cut pieces in this tray are extra. I'm not adding them on the card. I do have one final image to assemble, and that's the pot. I cut it out of a reddish brown cardstock color, and I'll add just a little bit of ink along the edges, sticking with the vintage photo ink color. Once I've inked both of those pieces, I'll clean up my glass mat and glue the 2 pieces together. So there are all the die cut images assembled. Now it's time to add them on the card. And I'll start by filling the pot with the brushes and the little palette knife. On the back side, I'm adding some clear double-sided adhesive tape. I'll remove the release paper, then hold up the pot and add the brushes on the back side. And I'm placing them at different heights inside the pot. I was comfortably able to add 5 brushes in the pot. Now I'll put more clear double-sided adhesive tape on the back to hold those together. There is still one paintbrush, the yellow, but the mouse will be holding it. Next, I'll attach the bent arm of the mouse so they're holding the paint palette. Tuck it through that hole, put a little bit of glue behind the hand and hold it in place. I'll add more glue on the back side and adhere it in front of the mouse. The other arm, the straight arm, this one will be holding the yellow paintbrush. I'll put a little bit of glue behind the hand and adhere it on top of the paintbrush. So there's the little mouse all assembled. So now it's time to grab the card and all the fun images. I'll start by adding the easel on the left side of the card, and I'm just gluing it down flat. Behind the mouse, I am popping up the head, and I'll also put a little bit of foam dimension behind the area of the paint palette that's not on top of the mouse. I'm using small foam squares from scrapbook.com in the 1mm thickness, so it'll add just that little bit of dimension. I'll remove the release paper, then put glue behind the rest of the areas of the mouse and that paintbrush, and adhere the mouse on the right side of the card. And I want to make sure the feet are standing on the wood floor. So there's the artist mouse admiring its beautiful painting. Next, I'll add the pot with all the brushes, and I'm putting it on the floor, the right side in front of the easel. With all of the brush handles on the back side of the pot, it is fairly thick, so to help keep it nice and level, I am adding some of the foam pieces at the bottom of the pot on the right and left side. And then the final few pieces to add are the tubes of paint. And I'll just scatter those on the floor. The mouse is not very clean when they're painting. I'll put the brown and green on the right side, and then that lighter green and yellow on the left side. And I did pop up the yellow tube of paint with some foam dimension. For a little extra detail on the card, I'm using a white gel pen. I'll add highlights on the easel, the 4 tubes of paint, a little bit on the pot, the mouse's hat, the inside area of the ear, a little tiny bit on the nose, couple dots for the mouse's cheek, and then a small highlight on the apron pocket. For a final finishing touch, I wanted the paint to have a wet look, so I'm using Glossy Accents. I'll add it on the colored area of the bristles of the brushes, and also the paint on the paint palette. I'm trying to be really careful not to touch those areas, but once it dries, it'll still have that super shiny wet look. I'm also trying to make sure there aren't any air bubbles since they are noticeable once it dries. I noticed a little extra glossy accent underneath the dark green paint area, and I'll just wipe that away with my tweezers. So there is my finished card, and I ended up making 4 using this design. So yes, I did a ton of die cutting, but it was worth it. For one of the cards, I switched the colors of the mouse's eye. So the main eye is black and that highlight is white. On the sample sheet that comes with the die set, Elizabeth Craft Designs has the main eye black and then that little white highlight. But I actually like the eyes better, mostly white with that small black dot. But no matter your preference, the mouse will still turn out adorable. If you are interested in any of the products I used in this video, I do have links in the description box below. Thank you so much for watching, and I hope you have a wonderful day.